recent weeks, along with some friends here from Occupy, see how the law can be used both for the general aims and objectives of Occupy, and also for protecting the environment. So Mel's going to tell us about something called the Community Bill of Rights now.
Hi everyone, great, I'm glad there's still quite a lot of people here. Community Bill of Rights. I'll just explain a bit about my story briefly. So I became really interested, really passionate about the environment some years ago after watching An Inconvenient Truth. That was summer 2006 when I was a law student. And I watched that film and all of a sudden it just clicked, like, shit, there's a massive problem here. Why is everyone just acting as normal? You know, I couldn't understand it, you know, once it clicked. And for the last few years I've been involved in a group that's called Wild Law, and they advocate basically earth-centered law. And there's quite a long tradition. There's a story behind this. There was a book by a South African lawyer called Cormac Cullinan. He wrote a book called Wild Law, a Manifesto for Earth Justice. And it's all about completely reorienting our laws. Because at the moment, the legal system as a whole facilitates and legitimises the destruction of our planet for profit. That is the whole problem with the law. And I'm really keen to actually help educate people, you know, that are part of Occupy, in how fundamental the law is to all the issues that we're talking about. I mean, people are really, you can see how destructive the economic system is. And yes, that's right, but the legal system underpins all that. So companies have a legal obligation to maximise profit for the shareholders. And this leads them to act in ways that are psychopathic, which, you know, as outlined in the corporation's statement. If you were an individual and your sole purpose in life was just to make profit, you would be a sociopath. And that is what our corporations are like. And environmental law, even in its most protective form, basically regulates the destruction of our planet. And you can see this through the system of permits and allowances. You know, the things that lawyers point out as, you know, things that help the environment are things like the emissions trading scheme, where you have permits, where you trade. That's, I mean, it's completely ineffective, but it's effectively commoditizing our planet. And we're talking about species and ecosystems that we have co-evolved with over millennia. So I mean, it's a completely bizarre system, and the legal system is structured to give power to the 1% and to keep individuals and communities subordinate. That is the whole purpose of law. That's how it's structured. So if we're going to get real fundamental change, then we really need to look at the legal system and completely change the whole premise of law. I'm talking about the legal system as a whole, not just environmental law, the legal system as a whole. So, yeah, that's a little bit of background. The Community Bill of Rights, to move on to that was originally drafted by a public interest law firm in the US. And I met with representatives, Max and I from Occupy Law. We're in the process of setting this up as a working group. But we organised the event on the 20th of February called The Role of Law in Time of Protest. And that got a lot of people thinking about how fundamental law is to all the issues that we're talking about at Occupy. So we met with these guys last night, representatives from the Community Environmental Legal Defence Fund. And they've drafted a local law which has been adopted by a couple of dozen of communities in the States, and it's very effective over there. What the Community Bill of Rights does is it sets out the rights of local communities. So it's things like right to a sustainable food system, right to a locally based economy, right to water, Rights of nature. This very much ties with wild law, my previous background, just focusing on the law and earth-centred governance. The Community Bill of Rights is broader than that, but it does have a provision in there about the rights of nature, and that says that natural communities and ecosystems have the right to exist and to flourish. And when you think about it, that is just common sense. These are other living beings that we've co-evolved with, as I've said, over millennia. They have a right to exist. But under the present law, they're treated as property. And they're exploited for profit and destroyed for profit. So the Community Bill of Rights sets out the rights of communities, including natural communities. In the second part of the Community Bill of Rights, it talks about limitations on corporate rights. Now, corporations have extensive rights in this country and in the US and in other legal systems that we've exported the whole idea of corporate rights to. If you came along to the talk on the 20th of February, you might have remembered Conor Gearty talking about the fact that the right to property is the most important human right in our society today. And corporations have this human right to property. And that basically trumps everything else. That trumps any, the kind of weak environmental legislation that we have to sort of protect the environment. So there are all sorts of ways in which the Community Bill of Rights is relevant to Occupy. It's relevant from an environmental point of view. It's relevant from the point of view of highlighting the democratic deficit, because the Community Bill of Rights says, we, the community, we are asserting our rights. We have the right to our own local economy, our food system, clean water, jobs, etc. And it limits the role of corporations. And as we all know, that's one of the major issues that Occupy is trying to highlight, the fact that the 1%, these massive corporations, have all the power. And the legal system is structured at the moment so that it gives them the power over us, over the community. So that's a very brief introduction to the Community Bill of Rights and how it's relevant. I'd also like to talk about what my plans are, how I'm going to take this forward. I wrote an article in the current edition of the Occupy Times, which you can read a little bit more about. I've got some copies of the Community Bill of Rights, and we might be able to break out into small groups a bit later on and see if that's if that's helpful. But there's not very much light here. There's probably other things I might like to talk about, but they doesn't pop into my head right now. But maybe.
Yeah, I think perhaps some questions would be a good way to just carry on the discussion here, and Mel can sort of flesh out a little bit some of these ideas. Is anybody who'd like to ask a question about Community Bill of Rights? Yeah, John, if you'd like to come to the front, please. Thanks.
So I saw the Community Bill of Rights on the website today for the first time, and there's a list of concerns or aspects of livelihood which it addresses, and I just wondered whether you would like to list them out, whether you could remember what they are. And things like food and water and energy and different things like that.
Yeah, let me get a copy of it then. Good. Read it out, Mel. Yeah, I can read it out. Yeah, read it out.
Right then, any more questions for Mel here on Community Bill of Rights? Now these are actually, I don't think Mel mentioned this, these are actually up and going in a certain number of towns across the United States already. And they're an effective defence, for local communities. I think one of the big problems that we're fighting against is the globalisation of the economy, and one thing we need to do is to protect local economies and to foster and nourish local economies. So I think this is an excellent practical measure. Any more questions for Mel about this idea? Does anybody want to ask anything about this? Right, Johnny, yeah.
Hi, my question is, sounds like a great idea. Has it like been put to the test when? Sorry, sounds like a great idea. Has it ever been put to the test when a corporation has wanted to do something really bad and it's gone to the court? Has there been anything like that yet?
So yeah, there are over 24 communities in the US that have adopted these community bills of rights. And when I was speaking, I mentioned yesterday, I met with the people from the Community Environmental Legal Defence Fund, the lawyers that are promoting this, and they said that with the more recent versions of the community bills of rights, they hadn't been challenged, and it had been effective. The Community Environmental Legal Defence Fund is known as a law firm of last resort, apparently, in the States. So communities come to them when they've got, there's some big corporation that wants to come into the community and they want to frack, or they want, Monsanto wants to come in and plant GM crops everywhere. Or supermarket developments, giant supermarket developments. So, yes. They were telling me that it has been effective at stopping that kind of thing. And I also want to say that adopting this, it is an act of civil disobedience. Like if I took it to a local council, as I'd like to do, they don't actually have the powers to adopt this, legal powers. It would be asking them to commit an act of civil disobedience. But as you know, that is how change happens. That is what Occupy is all about. The abolitionists, the suffragettes. You don't ask for powers of movements for systemic change work when communities, individuals, collectively assert their rights. And that's what this is all about. It's about the community asserting their rights. And yes, it has been effective, and that's why I want to introduce the idea over here. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? I think this is, by the way, just say this, I think if you know any local politicians, this is an idea that you can raise with them. If you know any local councillors, ask them, have you heard of the Community Bill of Rights? We need to get these kind of ideas out there. So, do you want to ask a question, Tina? Well, Mel has got some copies here. Mel will give you a copy if you want one. We'll also put one up on been some put up on the Occupy London Group Spaces list. Steve, would you like to come ask you a question?
Sorry.
Mel, I think it sounds absolutely fantastic, and I think we need to take this very, very seriously. I mean, what I personally really like about it, and I'm not an expert on it by any means. I know nowhere near as much about Mel and certain other people here about this because I've not explored it enough. But my instinct tells me, first of all, I really like the expression community bill of rights, and what I like about it is it's very straightforward. It's not complex. It's not. It doesn't confuse you by being highly sophisticated. It's not like the word corporation, for example, which is a highly sophisticated, confusing term, and who knows what a corporation is, and how many legal loopholes can a corporation get through, What the impression I've got also about it is it tries to be real and it tries to be simple. So you've got these important aspects: food, water, etc. Right? These are simple, basic elements of sustenance for all human beings to live. So my impression is, I might be wrong, but my impression is it tries to get rid of all the ridiculous overcomplexity that the establishment, the system throws on top of us to blind us and confuse us, and it brings things back to a simple way of looking at life: food, water, because it's these simple things that actually that help us live and help communities grow together.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, then another question here. Can you step forward a bit? Oh, you might be all right.
Yeah, hello. How are you going to get this into Parliament and get it to the government? Is that what we're planning to do?
No, because it's what I was saying earlier. You know, you don't kind of. The government aren't going to accept this. You know, you don't go saying, you know, can you give us some more rights? That's not how the suffragettes did it. That's not how the abolitionists do it. I want to take it to communities. I want to say, you know, let's mobilise them. Let's encourage the community to adopt it. It's also a local law. It's not going to be an act of Parliament. It's going to be. I mean, I need to decide on the appropriate target. It might be a transition town, or it might be a sympathetic London local authority, and just work on them. Just work on them until, you know, they accept it, and then we can have an example. And I want to encourage other people across the country, maybe people in rural communities, maybe communities that are under threat of fracking. Encourage them to adopt it as well. But I need to give a lot more intellectual thought as to how this is going to work, and I need people behind me as well, because at the moment, you know, there's just a couple of people. Yeah, great. I'll get me your emails, because I'm gonna have an email list, and I'm going to start trying to mobilise you, and you can start talking about this. That's how you can help me, and tweeting about it, and blogging and things like that.
Okay, thanks, Mel. So we're Occupy London, and we're talking about the Community Bill of Rights, which is a way of defending local democracy against large corporations. So are there any more questions on this? Yeah, Michelle, you have to come forward, I'm afraid.
It's not so much a question, it's more about the physicality that I think needs to go hand in hand with policy. I think we should be collectively buying horses, because it's like the new Holy Trinity. It's like, you know, you've got the horse, wood stove, vegetable plot. The horse can service both. We need to start taking over the roads with, you know, slower transport. Eventually you won't need to take the roads.
Rickshaws.
Yeah, rickshaws, yeah. Who is Mr. Richard Shaw? Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in the mix as a kind of a physicality in terms of, you know, not just dealing with it on one side of the fence, but actually having something that you can physically put in the way. And you can get great vegetables from.
Right, are there any more questions on this? I think in a moment we're going to ask, Mel's going to ask for a kind of temperature check on this idea, see how people feel about it, if people feel supportive and so on. Were there any more questions though before we go to a temperature check? Okay, yeah, Mel's going to read out a little bit, just to give you a flavour of what the Community Bill of Rights is about.
Okay, I'll just read out the most important bits of it, because I'm struggling with light as well. Okay. So the first bit is, this Community Bill of Rights is enacted pursuant to the inherent rights of the residents of, you know, concern your city to govern their own community. The Constitution recognises that all political power is inherent in the people. So here are some of the rights that are spoken about. Right to a locally based economy, right to affordable and safe housing, right to affordable preventative health care. That's obviously more relevant to the states. What I've handed out is the exact document that the Community Bill of Rights for Occupy communities, but actually what I would need to do is tailor this to the UK context. But having said that, you know, RIP NHS, so, you know, maybe that's quite relevant to us as well. Rights of nature, right to water, right to a sustainable food system, right to affordable and renewable energy, right to constitutional protections in the workplace, right to determine the future of neighbourhoods, right to a free, open and accessible internet, right to a citizen-managed and accountable police force. It's quite relevant.
They've gone.
Right to clean and fair elections, free from corporate interference. Obviously very pertinent. Right to clean government. Right to marriage equality. And then some of the prohibitions on corporate legal privileges include a prohibition on corporate personhood and privileges, where the corporation proposes to come in and violate the rights set out in the Community Bill of Rights. That's the rights of the communities, which is actually really quite radical. I'm not sure if people appreciate how radical it is, because you know, I mentioned that the corporations are mandated to act in ways that makes them psychopathic. So if a corporation is no longer recognised as a corporation, i.e. the directors and the individuals behind the company are individually liable, then that completely changes things. So if Shell is no longer Shell, but you know, whoever the CEO of Shell is, then you know, we could really do something with that. They could be fined. Well, they'd be taken to prison rather, for genocide and you know, all the other crimes that they commit. Ban on electioneering, ban on lobbying, people's right to self-government. So those are the main provisions that are in the Community Bill of Rights. And what I had proposed to do was to, but I don't know whether it's worthwhile because there's not very much light, was for people to kind of talk about, hand out some copies and people would talk about this in small groups for a bit. But can I take a temperature check on whether people want to do that? Sorry.
How do people feel about that to you? Would you like to get into groups to talk about this? Maybe just a short discussion and take a temperature check on that? Okay, it seems very Luke-ish there. So we'll take any more questions if there are any more questions. Right, so propose that we have the copies come back at another GA. Yeah, sure that can be organised. I have to say, one thing I really like about this proposal is the civil disobedience aspect of it. I think it's fantastic, you know, that we can also think about organisations, public organisations actually taking a stance of civil disobedience, and I'm sure they don't need that much pushing, some of them, you know, there are around the country, and you only need a few to start this off. We can think of parts of this country where there will be local councils that are probably quite ready to engage in this form of civil disobedience. So, and this is true democracy. This is what democracy looks like, as they say. Okay, any more questions for Mel? Yes, Steve.
Can I just suggest it's very dark now, and I think this is a really, really important issue. And I don't think, you might disagree with me, I don't think we can give this its proper due by going into groups now in the dark and trying to screw our eyes over bits of paper or something like that, or perhaps some people are cold or whatever. Why can't we fix a time, appoint a day or something where we can look at this in greater depth? It's so important, it's so serious. Leave it for now, fix a time where we can look at it at length in the light.
Okay, thanks a lot. I mean, I think, if I can give my personal opinion, I think it'd be great to have some kind of event where we get together and Mel and I don't know if we can get the people from the States who drew it up. Maybe that would be too difficult, but anybody else in the UK who's interested in this idea and pushing it forward, is there any other lawyers who are interested as well? That would be great to get some people together and hold an event around this. I think that would be fantastic. So, any other, anything else people want to say before we go to the shout-outs? We'll have some shout-outs in a moment. Yeah. All right, sorry, is Ian here wants to ask something or make a comment?
It's more of a technical point, actually, I think. Are corporations required to maximise their profit, or are they just required to look after the interests of their shareholders? Because if
it's the same thing. In law, it's the same thing.
Sure?
Yes.
The interests of the shareholders are defined as receiving profit, yeah? That's it. Yeah, I'd agree. Okay. All right then. So,
can I just remind people, like, if you're interested in this idea, if you want to find out more and kind of help and get involved, then please give me your email address, and I'm going to compile a little. You know, I'm going to keep in touch with people that are interested in helping. You don't have to be a lawyer. This is not about lawyers. It's just about kind of helping me to promote the idea and seed the idea with communities. Because there are all sorts of communities that I think could benefit from this.
thanks, Mel. So I'd like to go to a temperature check and check the level of support in a broad sense for this kind of measure, Community Bill of Rights. Can you show your hands, please? All right, thank you very much. That's very warm support. Thank you very much. Okay then. So we're going to move. Thanks, Mel. And thanks, Mel. That was really fantastic. All right, I think this is a really important idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to have some shout-outs, and then what I think it would be good to do is after the shout-outs, if people can just stay for a moment, so we can get some pictures of us sort of squatting over there in front of the